Complete fracture, which doesn't surprise me at all. We knew this was coming, right? Senator Tim Scott didn't have to go down and get some Chipotle. Had to cancel. No. Intel crypto users are not going to be happy with this. All right, guys, quick level set. This morning, January 15th, the Senate Banking Committee abruptly delayed the markup of the Clarity Act, which doesn't surprise me at all. We knew this was coming. But guys, this was supposed to be the most significant piece of crypto legislation in history. So why? What happened? The traditional banking lobby realized that if you can earn 5% on stablecoins, you might never put another dollar in a savings account again. So, the Clarity Act just became the biggest point of friction in global finance. Guys, if you've been following this, right? Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, he's all over the news. He was the biggest proponent of this, right? He was pushing it. This is great. Provide clarity, market structure. And now what? He pulled his support. Because this delay, it wasn't just a scheduling conflict, right? Senator Tim Scott didn't have to go down and get some Chipotle. Had to cancel. No. Complete fracture. Because like I said, just hours before the vote, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong pulled his support, stating, quote, he would rather have no bill than a bad bill. Because the issues in here are massive, right? We just did a video on Section 5 that talks about surveillance, right? And all that, and all those other issues in there. Surveillance, instant windows into transactions, right? And CEO Brian Armstrong, he can tell crypto users are not going to be happy with this. And he has a company and an exchange to protect. Okay, so what else is in here? Okay, what else caused them to delay this? Yield. Okay, banks are pushing for a total ban on stablecoin rewards. They argue that these rewards will drain deposits from local lenders. The banks are trying to preserve themselves. Okay, they're trying to preserve themselves. They're also worried about the DeFi Patriot Act. Okay, critics like Galaxy's Alex Thorne are calling this the biggest expansion of financial surveillance since 2001, potentially giving the Treasury power to freeze protocols without a court order. Imagine that, guys. The government is trying to put rules in place that says, hey, if we see something, boom, lock that blockchain down. Right? So this is, they made it seem, they throw out dates, they make it seem like it's all nicey nice patty cake, and then you start reading it and you be like, oh my gosh, what crypto was, they are trying to destroy. And all of a sudden, all the cheerleaders, all the big crypto people are like, no, we cannot support this. And if you read it, you can tell they're trying to protect the big boys, protect the JP Morgans, protect the Bank of Americas, because they can see the writing on the wall. Okay, so what else happened here? Tokenization ban. The draft of the Clarity Act also contains basically a de facto ban on tokenizing equities. The very tech that we discussed with music royalties is being targeted by regulators who want to keep stocks basically on the 1970s era rails. Okay, that's also in there. So while DC stalls, right? Washington DC can't get anything done. The rest of the world's moving. Okay, I mean, look at Avalanche. Well, the U.S. argues over yield. A startup called Malexi just launched the world's first agricultural asset exchange in Abu Dhabi. They aren't waiting for a bill. They're tokenizing actual food supplies, rice, grain, sugar, on Avalanche subnet. It's the same tech used for the music royalties we covered last week, but scaled to the global food chain. I told you that once they do it on one thing, people will be like, oh man, we can tokenize this. Tokenization of everything is coming. And if the U.S. doesn't get their act together, they're going to be left behind. So if we don't pass the Clarity Act soon, the NASDAQ of real world assets won't be in New York. It's going to be out in the Middle East. So how's the market reacting? Is it a healthy reset? Bitcoin's still hovering around 96K, right? It shook off a 30% drop in open interest, so it's flushing out the gamblers basically. Ethereum's holding strong at 3,300. Staking's hitting an all-time high. Investors are basically treating it like a digital bond. It's paying its staking rewards. and it's holding its value. Okay, so regardless of what happens in the Senate, the message from the charts is clear. Tech is outgrowing the legislation. It doesn't care. It's global, and it's going to keep moving. So what's the verdict, guys? What's next to watch? So the next 6 months, you're like, 6 months? I thought this was supposed to pass in January. No, it's not. It's going to be a midterm issue. The fact that the Coinbase CEO yanked his support makes me realize we have a long way to go. We're talking midterms, 2027. I don't know, right? So the next 6 months, it's going to be a race between SEC Chair Paul Atkins, the innovation exemptions, and a Congress that is clearly divided. We're looking at a split market, regulated, bank-friendly crypto in the U.S., and maybe what's could be the Wild West of high utility real-world assets moving to the EU and the UAE. So I'm going to be tracking the Clarity Act's new date, if there is one. If it doesn't pass by June, yes, I said June. We thought June. If it doesn't pass by then, we could lose the lead in the tokenization race for good. So just another update, guys. Again, not surprising. When you're dealing with banks the size of JP Morgan and Bank of America and Citi, and they, even a small fraction, right? Even 1% or 2% is massive, massive amounts of money that these guys could see that they're going to be losing. Because the next generation of banking customers, right? And I just did a video on this too, about Mr. Beast partnering with Tom Lee and Bitmine. The next generation of banking customers is going to be crypto, right? They're going to be stablecoin. They're going to be digital assets. Okay, and the legacy banks need to get on board, or are they going to be left behind? Because I don't know if this legislation will pass. As written, people want the flexibility, and the banks want to keep their profits. Classic. It's a classic headbutt between the everyday guy and the big guys, the big boys. If they're going to play in the pool, they want to control it, and they want to make their money. So again, I'm going to keep up on this. I'll bring you everything that gets announced as it gets announced, and we'll see if we can get something passed. So until then, we'll see you next time.